Silver soldering like that is perhaps the single most important technique a jeweler can learn. That kind of joint, one in which solder is flowed into the structure of the material, combines the delicate handling necessary for the jewelry scale with tremendous strength. The joint that I just made is in fact as strong as the parent metal. Metals are made up of crystals, and it helps me to understand what's going on the crystalline level. Metal is made up of a geometric lattice of crystals, represented here by cubes. When heat is applied, the crystals move apart, creating microscopic spaces. If the metal is heated to its melting point, the crystals have moved so far apart that the bonds holding them are broken. In soldering, we use a material formulated to be fluid within the temperature range where there is a space between the crystals. In the soldering process, the metal is heated until the solder melts and is then drawn into the spaces between the crystals by capillary action. Proper soldering requires that the metal be perfectly clean and that the pieces be fitted so that there are no gaps. The soldering process requires the interaction of three factors: flux, solder, and a heat source. When metal is heated, it tends to combine with oxygen, forming metallic oxides. These are gray films which prohibit the free flow of solder. Flux is a chemical that absorbs oxygen before it has a chance to combine with the metal. What I've been using here is a white paste flux, but there are other options you should be aware of. Another paste flux that lends itself to base metals because it's very heavy duty, does a good job of absorbing oxygen, is a black variety. The other side of the family are liquid fluxes. These have the advantage of application. They can be brushed on, you can dip the piece into them, or they can be put into a spray jar like this and spritzed onto the piece throughout the soldering operation. To make solder, the parent metal is mixed with small amounts of other metals in specific proportions to determine the flow point of the alloy. Zinc and copper are added to silver to create these three commonly used grades of silver solder. The range of torches available can be overwhelming to a newcomer to jewelry making, but they fall into two categories. Some torches, like this one, use atmospheric air combined with a fuel. In this case, the fuel is propane. Another popular version is the torch I'm using here, called a prestolite, or acetylene atmosphere torch. The other family uses bottled oxygen to increase the temperatures available, while simultaneously allowing for a smaller flame. Again, several gases may be used. Oxygen torches are especially handy for small work and repairs. Any torch can produce three types of flame. In a neutral flame like this, the amount of fuel is matched by the available oxygen, resulting in complete combustion. The fuel-rich reducing flame is used to prevent oxidation. The pale, violet-colored oxidizing flame should generally be avoided. The torch is one of the basic tools in a jewelry studio, and its use should be thoroughly understood. If you're not comfortable with the operation of your torch, consult a welding supply company for help. Check the threaded fittings for leaks by brushing them with soapy water. Tanks should be secured in a stable, upright position. Keep paper towels and other combustibles away from the soldering area. When you're finished for the day, close the valves and bleed the hoses. Let's watch the process again. I'll apply flux and then lay the solder chips so that they span the joint. The flux uses water as a vehicle to create a consistency that can be brushed, and the first step is to evaporate that water away. You'll notice that I keep the torch well above the metal. If I come in too fast, too soon, the rapid boiling of the water will throw the solder chips away, and I'll have to reposition them. When the flux has been converted to a white scale, I can lower the torch. The torch I'm using here is a prestolite. Another chemical that's part of the soldering process is called pickle. This is a granular substance that's mixed with water and kept warm at the bench side. During the soldering operation, the metal is covered with oxide film and a flux residue called flux glass. Either of these can be removed by abrasion, but that process is at best tedious and also wasteful of the material. Instead, we'll drop the piece into the pickle, and if the pickle is fresh and warm, after a couple minutes, both of these surfaces will be removed. When pulling the piece out of the pickle, I'll give it a quick dip in water. And here you can see a piece immediately after soldering and what it looks like when it comes out of the pickle. The black surface is the oxide film, and the green is the flux residue. There's a lot to soldering, and because it's a fundamental part of jewelry making, let's review. The metal should be clean and the parts well fitted. Remember to apply flux. Place the solder so that it touches both pieces being joined. Start with the torch high and evaporate the liquid in the flux. If the chips move, slide them back. Heat all parts so that they reach soldering temperature at the same time. And when you're finished, clean the work in pickle. Because of its control, soldering is used for most jewelry applications, but there's another way to join metal with heat called fusing. In that case, the metal is heated to the point where its skin begins to melt. When it becomes fluid, the surfaces of all the pieces involved flow together, commingle, and make a strong joint. The result is usually rounded edges and an interesting texture. First step is to apply flux. In this case, I don't have to start off slow because I don't have to worry about solder chips flying around. Remember, there's no solder being used here. What I'm particularly paying attention to is that all the pieces reach the same temperature at the same time. My indicator for this is color. Now I start to see a red color, and I'm going to focus on one area of the piece. You see the way it turns silvery there. That means the skin has become molten. And right at that point, right there in the corner, fusion has taken place. In this area, these two pieces are now joined. Now I'll move up and do this joint. That's now been done. That's been done. I could stop now. At this point, the metal is still intact. It looks just like it did before. Usually with fusion, though, I want to go a little further because I'm doing this for the effect of textures and irregular edges. I'll create this by making the metal molten and then removing the heat. This heat and chill reaction causes the metal to buckle and creates a surface texture, which I might call orange peel. I continue heating and cooling until I get the look I want. After fusing, the piece is cleaned in pickle. So, that's an overview of the most common ways of joining metal. Cold connections, such as tabs and rivets, and the use of heat for soldering and fusion.